Welcome to The Explainer, where we decode fascinating sources into structured visual insights. Today, we're jumping right in and unpacking some truly deep clinical concepts from the BACP Private Practice Journal. Our goal? To reveal the invisible forces that are quietly shaping human behavior all around us. So let's kick things off with a pretty profound question. Just how much of your behavior is actually driven by unseen, historical, or deeply internalized dynamics? Think about your daily reactions, your underlying fears, or even your desires. Are they purely your own creations, or are they the echoes of something much, much deeper? And that brings us to the core theme for today's explainer, the hidden inner world. We're talking about unseen elements like societal conditioning, internal voices, ancestral ties, and our natural temperaments. These things operate completely out of sight, basically acting as the invisible architects of our conscious reality. Here is our roadmap for exploring these hidden forces today. First, we'll look at patriarchy and mother-daughter bonds. Then, the eating disorder voice. Third, family constellations and ties. And finally, we'll wrap up with the power of introverts. All right, let's dive right into part one, patriarchy and mother-daughter bonds, unseen intergenerational forces. It's truly fascinating when you trace the last century of psychological thought. You've got this massive evolution. We start way back with early thinkers like Freud and Bowlby, but then we jump to the present day with something called the mother and adult-daughter attachment model, or MADAM for short. What's crucial about this new model is that it explicitly recognizes intergenerational trauma that gets passed down through unrecognized patriarchal societies. Now, you've probably heard of fight, flight, or freeze responses, right? Well, the journal points out that children raised in patriarchal environments, where honestly their emotional needs are often put on the back burner, they frequently default to that freeze option. This means they internalize their emotions and basically suppress their needs just to survive conflict. And over time, that breeds some deeply insecure attachment styles. To make this super concrete, the source dives into a case study about a client named Linda and her mother. It paints a picture of this heavy intergenerational pattern where the women in the family were always expected to acquiesce. They were supposed to take on these supportive, uncomplaining roles for the men. When Linda decided to challenge those expectations by prioritizing her own career and refusing to support her brother's abusive behavior, it caused immense resentment. Her mother, who had essentially sacrificed her entire life to fit the motherhood mold, felt Linda's independence as a profound personal rejection. It's a striking example of how societal rules secretly write our own family scripts. Moving on to our second topic, the eating disorder voice, the hidden roommate. The text describes something pretty chilling, actually. It's the experience of feeling like you literally have two brains in your head. On one side, you have the healthy brain. That's the part that remembers a joyful, completely normal relationship with the body and with food. Contrasted against that is the ED voice. This is a distinct, agonizing internal force, and it actually resists therapeutic help because it's singular. Actually, it's more like an unwavering, relentless goal is to change the body at absolutely any cost. And just to put the urgency of this into perspective, the source points out a staggering 37% jump in hospital admissions for eating disorders just between 2018 and 2019. We are talking about an escalating crisis here, one that therapists are encountering more and more outside of traditional hospital settings. Because the risk is just so incredibly high, the author, therapist Jeremy Sachs, lays out 5 absolutely critical steps therapists need to take before treating eating disorders outside of a multidisciplinary medical setting. You have to contract for broader care, never ever work in isolation, assess for overlapping mental health issues, be totally honest about your own capacity, and engage in extensive supervision. It is a stark reminder that this internal force requires a literal fortress of external support to combat safely. Okay, let's shift gears to part 3, family constellations and ties, ancestral echoes. So, back in the 1980s, Bert Hellinger came up with this really revolutionary theory. He argued that families are actually bound by these deep, unconscious rules he called the orders of love. He believed that interrupting the transmission of past guilt and pain to newer generations requires finding alignment with these invisible ordering forces, and it's only then that peace and strength can return to the family system. The source explains how this therapy plays out in the real world, and it's wild. They often use group participants to stand in as representatives for a client's family. Through something called surrogate perception, these random representatives actually report feeling the real emotions of the family members. The whole goal is to reorganize the system to respect two main rules. First, the order of place, meaning everyone must be in their proper hierarchical spot. And second, belonging, which is this radical idea that every single member has an equal right to belong to the family, no matter what they've done in the past. The journal shares two super compelling case studies to really ground this concept. Take David, for example. For him, healing meant spatially moving the representative of his mother so she stood behind him. This allowed him to symbolically face his future rather than constantly trying to parent his own parent. Then there's Maria. In a one-on-one session, her therapist used simple pieces of paper on the floor to map out the severe poverty and cultural history behind her mother's emotional distance. In both of these cases, taking these hidden systemic dynamics and making them visible literally relieved the clients from carrying burdens that belonged to their ancestors. Which brings us to our fourth and final hidden force, the power of introverts, the quiet strength. There's this quote from psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott that sets up a really stark contrast. Now, while calling someone socially useless sounds pretty harsh and entirely negative, the author of our source argues this actually points to an introvert's hidden superpower. It reveals an invulnerability, a deep self-sufficiency, and this stubborn reluctance to dilute their original dreams just for the sake of meaningless social performance. They don't need that constant external validation to know who they are. And that right there leads into why introverts often feel so completely unseen today. According to Susan Cain's theory outlined in the text, 20th century urbanization essentially created a cult of personality. Our society developed this severe bias where we highly value loud, extroverted action, and we unfairly overshadow the introvert's natural inclination toward deep, quiet contemplation. Basically, we reward the talkers, not necessarily the thinkers. But history absolutely shatters that bias. Just think about it. Einstein, Darwin, Gandhi, Lincoln, Mandela, Rosa Parks. None of these people were socially useless. They demonstrate unequivocally that this inward-turning contemplative force, this hidden introvert power, has fundamentally shaped our modern world in ways that loud action never could have achieved on its own. All right, let's wrap this up. Section 5, Revealing the Unseen, bringing it all together. So whether it's deep-rooted societal conditioning, a demanding and aggressive internal voice, the heavy weight of your family's unwritten history, or just the natural, quiet wiring of your own temperament, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder after this explainer wraps up. Which of these hidden forces is secretly writing your story? Thank you so much for joining us, and keep questioning the unseen.